What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we are going to do some maintenance on my 2007 Yamaha R6. Now I've owned this bike actually just over 5 years now. I bought this the year before I bought the GTR and I love this thing. But in today's video, I have a brand new rear tire, some oil and oil filter. We're gonna get the bike up to par, ready for the new season. But first, I have to do this. I was not able to do it the last time I put a rear tire, which is of course go do a big old burnout to roast this thing up and finish it up. So I got a pretty good spot now. Let's go ahead and tear up this tire. All right, so that was a pretty good look at doing a nice little burnout. Let's see what the tire looks like now. I think we are seeing some cords. Not too bad. It is smoking a little bit, and wow, I'm gonna have to clean that up quite a bit for sure. All right, so then back at the house now, let's take a better look at the damage. I noticed there's a nice chunk missing right there. Hopefully you can see that pretty well. And then a nice strip. There's definitely a top layer of rubber that is gone now where we have the under layer. So I think that's a pretty good job to say goodbye to this tire. So I have 24,500 miles on the bike right now, and I bought it at 11,000 miles where I did brand new tires. But now let's get this off. So we have a 1 1/4 inch bolt on the side right here. The bike is in gear and I'm leaving it on the ground just to give some resistance. And it shouldn't be too hard. You can hold the bike a little bit if needed. But you can easily get this off by hand for sure. All right, from there, you're gonna wanna use a normal bike stand to get this thing up. All right, now we just need to push out the axle and we should be able to knock this thing right off. All right, there we go. Tire is off. Caliper, you just gotta wiggle it a little bit out of the way. And with both tires loaded up into the car, let's hit the road. All right, so we are at the shop now. We're gonna get the tire all switched. We're actually using a normal car tire changing unit, which is pretty cool. You can do that. All right, so we are back to the house with the brand new rubber on the rear tire of the R6. Let's get this thing reinstalled and then move on to changing the oil. And then from there, all we gotta do is line up the chain to where it's nice and even and obviously nice and tight. So with the rear tire all squared away and the axle bolt all torqued to spec, it's time to move on to the oil change. So I bought this bike in March 5 years ago. Every March I do my oil change on it. I did 2,200 miles in the last 12 months on the bike. So beginning of the season, that's when I kind of like to change it, just so I start the season fresh. So last year's oil change, I did this, the 10W40 Mobil 1 Racing Oil, full synthetic, and I wrote on it, there is 3/4 left, 0.75 of 1 quart left. So for this year, I only ordered 2 of them. And I went with Valvoline now because the price was like $7 a quart. Mobil 1 was 20 something dollars per quart, which I think is ridiculous. All oil is pretty much the same, so it's kind of useless. So I'm using 2 quarts, brand new Valvoline, and then the 3/4 quart of the leftover from last year's oil change. So oil, I only spent 15 bucks on oil, and then I'm rocking the high flow oil filter, which is what I did, I think 2 years ago. The last oil change I did the K&N. This was like $7, so a lot cheaper, and I've used high flow in my dirt bikes before. So nothing wrong with any of these brands, obviously. And I'll have everything linked in Amazon. I'll have the oil filter, the tools I'm using, and everything, just so you guys can get all the tools you need to do this at home. It's very basic, obviously simple hand tools. So with that said, all we gotta do is take off this blue portion of the bike, and then we can pull out the underside and then take a few more things off to get the oil draining. So from there, we need to remove the shift linkage from this top portion. It's just a 10mm, and we can easily loosen this. And we can just pop this right off and get it out of the way. So from there, we're using a 17mm to get the drain plug bolt off. And depending on how tight it gets, you can obviously use a little bit of leverage just to get it going. All right, and we can go ahead and loosen it all the way and try not to make a mess. All right, nice and chocolatey. It's actually pretty transparent. From this angle, I can tell a pretty good looking oil, quite honestly. I don't see any chunks or anything coming through it, but nothing glittering or anything like that. So obviously the oil filter's been doing its job, keeping everything nice and clean. But we're gonna go ahead and drain that one, and then take the 17 while we're just doing that. Let's loosen up the oil filter just a little bit. And I like the high flow in K&N because we have this bolt right here. It makes it a heck of a lot easier than the original one, because that can get kind of hard with the clamp it uses. So with it finishing up draining, we're just gonna clean where the oil filter is gonna go, just to make sure it's nice and clean. And then from there, we're just gonna reinstall this. And you wanna kind of hand tighten it. You don't need to crank it on using this bolt. We're gonna have to take it off with the bolt, obviously, like you just saw, but it really just needs to be firmly tightened. But if you wanna do it with the wrench a little bit, nothing crazy, that ought to do the trick. And then last up, we're just going to wipe off the underside where the drain plug is, and then reinstall that drain plug back into place. And I know some people might ask about the little washer in between them. This is the 5th oil change. I have never had one oil leak. I've never had an issue with this bike. I'm at like 25,000 miles roughly, and this is how I do the oil change, and it seems to work perfectly. My brother does the same thing on his bike, and he has almost 40,000 and still running strong. This one, nice and firm. Ugh, you want it nice and tight. And then I spilled some oil where it drained out of the oil filter. You want to clean the exhaust header off a little bit because that can smoke a little bit. So you're going to smell it when you first start it up. You could line it with foil or something, but I don't really do that because it doesn't drip that much. So onto filling up the oil in this bike. It's just on this right side here. You take the little plastic one, and it's gonna have a rubber O-ring, and we'll just take it easy so we don't spill anything and fill this thing back up. And I'm actually noticing if you pour it on the top part of the funnel, it'll actually go in a lot quicker, and you won't have it puddling up with this angle. Of course, I could put the bike down on the kickstand, which would help. All right, well, there we go. All the oil's in the bike. Of course, I'm gonna start it up, run it a little bit, and we'll check the level just to make sure it is perfect, but it should be all set. All right, so that about wraps it up for changing the oil and doing a new rear tire on the Yamaha R6. So what I just did before, I just filmed that clip, started it up, let it sit for a second, and then you pull the dipstick out, which is right here, and then just push it back in without rethreading it to measure the depth. And the oil level is right at the middle of that line. Again, 5 times going. It pretty much is very consistent with how I've done it, and 2.75 quarts came out when I poured them into the empty containers, and that's exactly what I put in the bike. So it's nice to know that it's not burning any oil or anything like that. And as far as maintenance goes for a bike like this, which should be 2006 all the way up to 2021, they should be identical process, and even the older ones probably are about the same. Super easy and cheap to do. Hope you guys enjoyed today's quick video, and that burnout was pretty fun. I haven't ever done a burnout on my bike before. We did it on Mike's bike, but it was fun doing it on the R6. And actually, I have a little bit of rubber that I'm gonna have to clean up on this, but it was very well worth it. And I even got my tire down to the cords, which was my goal, because I didn't want to blow it up so I could actually get home. Anyways, that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you did, and I'll see you guys in the next video.